and gentlemen, welcome back to the Dropkick Radio Wrestling Show right here at dropkickradio.com. Jeremy Graves joined alongside Martin Lacelli, and joining us on the line at this time is a very, very special guest this week, because only about a week ago or so, he was a roster member of World Wrestling Entertainment, and we're very happy to be joined by him. You will know him better as Chris Masters, but good sir, I believe you're now going by your real name of Chris Morodetsky, is that correct?
Well, I mean, I'm Chris Morodetsky, always. That's what I was born, so I was only Chris Masters as a day job. Come on now.
I suppose then that's probably the first question to ask is, now that you're back on the independent scene, how are you going to be referring yourself as?
I think what we'll do is we'll put the masterpiece, Chris Masters still. I think just what we'll do is we'll put former in little itty-bitty letters right next to it that you can barely even see. At least that's my tentative plan.
Ah, well, there we go, then, everybody. So look out for him on the independent circuit, then. To begin with, Chris, as I mentioned, last week you were a member of the WWE roster, so first question should be, now that it's been 1 week on from that, how are you feeling about your release?
How am I feeling about my release? Well, let me say this. It's definitely a very different circumstances from the first time. I accept full responsibility for the first time. I was young. I made a lot of bad decisions. But, I really turned my life around. I came back. Initially I was just happy to be back. But, as time went on, I got really hungry. And I really wanted to also prove the naysayers wrong, that, I wasn't just a body, that I was a that could go. And, over the last year, I felt like I was really had some good matches on Superstars with various guys, being Swagger, Rex, Drew McIntyre. And, forwarding to the release, it came out of nowhere, and it was surprising to me. And I'll say this, a lot of people say, like the casual wrestling fan maybe wouldn't be that surprised. But if you had seen my work over the last year and you had known that I had been taken aside by Triple H and on numerous occasions telling me that Vince and himself had recognized how much I've progressed and how good I've gotten. And, I really felt like we were going to figure out something for me, like a fresh coat of paint, as he put it, or something. So, I mean, it was surprising to hear about the release because I felt like I really had really good things coming to me, and this was going to be my year. So,
when you returned to the WWE, was there ever anything on the table as to what direction they wanted to go in with you, or were you literally just hired back?
Well, it was, again, if you watch, when I first debuted, I had the machine behind me. I had the Master Lock Challenge, and so it was very different the second time around. When you don't have the machine behind you, which after time I knew I didn't. I just knew that they weren't putting any kind of investment behind me. And, and then also I knew that they weren't going to give me any promo time necessarily, so I just knew that, it just came down to the fact that I was going to have to really work my ass off, basically, for every opportunity I was given this time. And I didn't want to have it any other way. I didn't want anything handed to me. I didn't, like the first time out, I wanted to work for everything I got and really just climb the ladder. And, so, I mean, I don't know if I got off topic there, but...
No worries. I will ask them, because you mentioned that there was very different circumstances on both of your releases. Was this release harder to take than your first one? It's hard to say, because there's part of me that feels vindicated from this time around, because, on one hand I'm pissed, obviously, because I feel like I did everything right, and, I shouldn't have probably been sacrificed, not at this point, not in the peak of my career. But, at the same time, just hearing all the support from the fans through my email and through Twitter, and just hearing the recognition of, some of my peers over the last week, just knowing that, I, at least if nothing else, did show a lot of people that, I could go. I feel vindication in that. But, like I said, the first time it was easier to accept because it was all on me, and, I had really messed up, and, I also just felt like, I wasn't ready for everything that was given to me at that point. So, I mean, this time I feel vindication, but I'm also upset. And, and surprised that they cut me when they did.
Given that you are feeling a bit upset about it then, as you've just mentioned, I will ask if you don't mind, given that, as has been demonstrated by your work on television, that you have clearly worked to improve yourself, were you initially angry that you got released perhaps over other people on the WWE roster, or does that not come into it at all?
Well, I'm not, there's nobody that I can, that's not really the way I think. I mean, the thing is, I'm sure there's numerous people who should have been cut before me, but, the thing I'm focused on is the fact that I know I shouldn't have been cut, not at that time, not in the peak of my career, not without even being given a shot. But, I don't want to make it all sound bad. I mean, I'm upset, obviously, about the release, but, in a lot of ways, I mean, I'm optimistic because there's a lot of things open to me right now, and I'm not, again, different from the first time I was released. This time I'm not going to leave anything off the table, whether it's pro wrestling or not. But, I will say I have no plans to just walk away from the world of professional wrestling and sports entertainment because it's still my love and my passion, and that's only strengthened within the last year through, just really that being my place where I can just, it's like when you go out in that ring, sometimes it can be your only release. And to me, it really became that thing that the only thing I really enjoyed was just going out there and performing. So, I'd love to continue to still do that, and I'm not going to leave anything off the table.
Excellent stuff. Looking back at your second WWE tenure then, as we've already talked about, you clearly modified yourself, the way you conducted in the ring, as well as adapting yourself from your original masterpiece, persona as it were. With that in mind then, aside from the fact you didn't have the machine behind you, as you've mentioned, did you have any personal goals upon your return?
Well, yeah, I really felt like I could possibly go all the way. I was really getting confident in my ability. And, like I was telling you before, my immediate goal was just to at least prove that I wasn't just a body and that I could be a worker, because all the guys I respected and emulated as a fan growing up were, the guys like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels and Kurt Hennig, and I didn't want to be the guy who was forced down people's throats or looked at like a bodybuilder coming into professional wrestling, trying to make money and get out. That wasn't the case at all. I loved it. So, my goals were definitely to, go as far as I possibly could in the business, and I really was feeling confident in myself for the first time that I was ready for any opportunities that were given to me, and ready to seize on them.
And perhaps then on a percentage scale, how many of your goals did you actually achieve during your recent run?
Well, I wasn't in any vital storylines or anything like that. So, the only goal that I achieved is I feel like I left there, and proving a lot of the naysayers wrong. And a lot of the people that used to be my critics are at least giving me props at this point, and recognizing the fact that I worked my ass off in that ring every week over the last year. Whether it was a dark match or WWE Superstars. I went out there and I emotionally invested myself in the match. So, like I said, if I accomplish anything, it's at least that little bit of recognition from that pocket of wrestling fans who were actually able to see WWE Superstars within the last year.
Changing gears slightly, because this may be a question that many people have wondered and would want to know how different it is. So, you're someone who has been a member of the Raw roster and the SmackDown roster, and although obviously they're both part of WWE, how, if at all, does working on each brand differ?
Well, I loved SmackDown, and I think a lot of my close friends up there did too. Especially last year, we had such a great unit of guys. Edge was our locker room leader. We had Glenn, Kane, and a lot of the younger guys like myself, Cody, Drew McIntyre, Tyler Rex, and we just really had a good team. It was a team effort over there, and it really felt like a team effort. At Raw, it definitely feels like there's somebody who's in charge. It's a very different vibe. There were bigger personalities over there, and SmackDown was always much more the team effort. Also because SmackDown always felt like the underdog too. It felt like you had the Battle Raw, which is this huge, monster that's been built over the last, 15, whatever it is, years since 1993. So, it was, it's definitely always an uphill battle. We felt like underdogs, and we all kind of banded together through that. And, we worked our butts off on the card from top to bottom. And so I definitely felt more continuity and kind of team effort on SmackDown as opposed to Raw.
SmackDown, to many people, especially in recent years, has always come across more as the wrestling show on WWE when you compare Raw and SmackDown. Does that come across in the locker room as well, or does it really just depend on the day and what kind of show you're doing?
Well, to be honest, most people would say Superstars is a wrestling show because you'll only get the time frame you get sometimes to work on the SmackDown and Raw shows, as you've seen, is just it's ridiculous. You can't really have. Sometimes you have a 5-minute seg, and it's very tough. But I will say that the SmackDown was definitely known throughout the years as more of the wrestling program than Raw, because Raw was always more storyline driven. So, to answer your question, yes.
Looking back then to when you first debuted in WWE, obviously you were given a main event level position near enough from the get-go. So looking back then, while you obviously had the main event body, did you feel that you were ready for that position as an overall performer?
No, not at all. I mean, that's why I'm saying, when I first debuted, and, a lot of guys fall victim to this. I mean, they bring you up prematurely. And it was prematurely on so many levels. It was not only in-ring work, but it was also just, my maturity level at that age. I was about 20 years old or 19 when I got signed, and I got called onto the road by 20, and then I was on TV by 21. And, it's so tough, because when you go from, living a normal life and working, regular jobs, and then you go, it was always my goal, but, you achieve success and you're able to get into the line of working on a career, and then you just have so much, such a change over a year or two. It's just like I wasn't ready for all, the money. I wasn't responsible enough at that point in my life for all those opportunities that were given. But that's what made me feel so much more confident this time out that I was ready, because, I really had, got my life together. I had matured as a person. I'd already reached a rock bottom coming out of WWE the first time and bounced back from it. So, I had a lot more confidence and a lot more maturity this time around. And, I could have done a hell of a lot bigger and better things this time than definitely the first time. I cut myself short the first time.
Still looking back at your first time in WWE, you had the opportunity to work with some of the biggest names in wrestling, including Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair. What did this mean to you to be able to work with two people like this so early on in your WWE career?
Oh, it means the world. I mean, it still does. I'll always look back at that and be thankful for the fact. I mean, I look at it like this. Like, I grew up idolizing Shawn Michaels. As an in-ring worker, as a performer, he was just amazing. So for me to be able to work my childhood hero is a dream that how many kids get to work, against their favorite, like how many kids nowadays will get to work against Kobe Bryant in 10 years or 15 years? I mean, it's a small number. There might be a couple who idolize him that actually get to play with him, but it's so rare. I just remember I didn't want to come out of that program with Shawn Michaels and, working with Ric Flair with any regrets. And I remember I was very happy with the way our Unforgiven match turned out, and I'll always look back at those as some of my fondest memories of the business, even working with those guys overseas in Europe, because the crowds, the reactions were just amazing. It was unlike anything I've ever felt, and it was some of the most fun I've had in my life, probably.
That's actually an excellent segue into our next topic, because I wanted to bring up the international touring aspect of WWE, and specifically coming over to the UK. Many people in the past have talked about how the crowds in Europe are so much different. There's a lot different atmosphere there. The crowds are a bit more rabid. What is it to you, aside from the fact, obviously, the reactions, that stand out about the European crowds the most? Is there something specific that makes it really different and makes the fans react that way?
Well, I'll say this, I'll definitely say the female fans in Europe are definitely typically a lot better looking than the female fans in the States. I'll give you that. But, you know, I mean, aside from with the crowd reaction thing, just cover first. I mean, you know, they get starved for sports entertainment a little more than a lot of the cities around locally, you know, here in the U.S. So, you know, they're a little more fired up every time we come out there, and they definitely show it through, you know, just their response and, you know, just everything when they're in the show. They're really a big part of it. But, I mean, the Europe tours were just always amazing just because, I mean, there were some days that we were in 3 countries in one day, literally flying out of, you know, one place, flying into another just to fly out after the show. And, you know, the fans sometimes will literally be in, you know, in the dozens at the hotels and, you know, roaming through the hallways. It gets really crazy sometimes on those international gigs.
Are you someone then that when it came to the international touring aspect of it, were you someone that looked forward to it, or did you dread the travel schedule quite a bit?
Well, I mean, we all looked forward to it, but the thing with those is it's the most work you're going to do in this line of work is those, because they're usually about 2 weeks long and you're working every day. So, you know, it's going to be a lot of work and it's going to be very tiresome and a little word I use called grizzling. But at the same time, you know, you know it's going to be fun, and you know also that the payoff is good, and you know that you know it's going to be worth it all around. And by the end of the tour, it felt so gratifying by the end when we would all celebrate and, you know, look back and reflect. I can actually think back to Edge's last tour, and that was really something special because we labeled it the This Is It tour. That was when he was retiring. And he couldn't work, but he came with us to Europe, and, you know, he made an appearance in the main event, and then, you know, he'd stay around and celebrate after. And, you know, Rey Mysterio had some custom shirts made for Edge that only me and the boys have that say Edge, This Is It tour. They have his original wrestling name on it. And, you know, they were just, you know, there's been some amazing international tours. And they're usually a good bonding experience for everybody because we're literally with each other every day. So, I mean, you go through all these different things. You go through days where, you know, you're happy, and then the next day you might be grumpy or tired or sick of seeing everybody. It's just it's a number of different things, you know, in that 2 week span.
Is there a particular standout memory or match of yours from your time wrestling in the UK that you remember most and you really look back fondly on?
Well, the last memory I have over there was I worked Drew McIntyre. I remember in a match where, I mean, I was supposed to be the babyface, but we were in Europe, so they were clearly behind Drew. But, you know, I just, that's a memory that just stands out to me just because I liked working with Drew McIntyre within the last year, and you bring up the UK. But I've had, you know, back in my first stint, I had many great memories from over there. I know I had worked Shawn Michaels over there, and, you know, probably even with Ric Flair, and, you know, I've just always enjoyed going out there. I've never had a bad experience in the UK or Europe.
Looking to how you conduct yourself in the ring, perhaps, be it on a WWE or independent wrestling level, do you prefer to work in front of a large-scale crowd, perhaps an arena, as it were, or do you prefer to work in front of an intimate crowd when it comes to your wrestling style?
Well, this is the thing. I always say that, you won't want to work in an arena that's half full as opposed to, say, the ECW bingo hall. Because the thing is, you know, with some of the live events, if you go and we're at a big arena and it's not completely full, for instance, you know, you don't feel the intimacy of the energy like you're saying as much. You know, you don't feel that. But if you were in a place that was more condensed and the crowd was obviously, it's more intimate and the crowd is alive and they're fired up, I mean, you know, you can get more of a rush, just as much of a rush, if not more, off of 1,000 people as compared to 8,000 in a big arena.
In that case, then, I will ask, in terms of working in front of a big arena or a small independent, a small intimate level, I should say, which do you find harder?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, if you have a small crowd that's not, that isn't loosened up and, isn't, that you have to try to really entice to have a good time. I mean, that can be much more difficult than a huge crowd, to be honest. So, big crowds were always easy just because it ends up being so many people and it's hard to narrow it down to just one person. But if you have a small crowd who's not energetic, you're basically making eye contact with all these people, and it's definitely not as much fun.
Looking back through all of your times in WWE now, what are you most proud of during both of your tenures in WWE? Is there one thing that you are super proud of?
I'd just say an accumulation of my work over the last year, and from my first stint, definitely working with some of the guys that, I put on such a pedestal, like you were saying, like Shawn Michaels, like, Triple H, Ric Flair, and, a lot of these guys from the generation before me, and then even the generation before the generation. If you look at, me to Shawn Michaels to Ric Flair, I mean, you got 3 generations of wrestler in one ring, which was pretty baffling to me, like, looking back at it. So those were probably my fun. Some of those memories with Carlito in those early days were a lot of fun.
Have you got any good stories from Carlito with us that you could share?
Well, there was one time we were traveling, and he had pulled up the Ultimate Warrior DVD, and we were trying to entertain ourselves on a long 3-hour drive, and we're just getting into this thing like crazy. And I remember, next thing I know, the car just started acting up on me, and I'm like, what's going on? So, we turn off the Warrior DVD finally 2 hours later, but by that point, I realized we're running out of gas, and there's no gas station within miles of where we're at. So we kind of ended up screwed on that one. I think we ended up having to walk or get a ride to a gas station and fill up one of those gas containers and fill it up. But, that's one memory off the top of my head of probably dozens. I keep these things filed away.
Were you a big Ultimate Warrior fan growing up?
Oh, yeah. Well, Ultimate Warrior was kind of my introductory into the business. As a kid, I remember I had somehow seen him, and the Ultimate Warrior character captivated me, and it got me into, I started watching wrestling, and I just was disappointed so many times because as other fans around that point, Warrior would come and go, and eventually it just got to the point where I lost faith in him as a fan, and I was already invested in other wrestlers, and it made it even that much more disappointing than when I, in my adult life, when I'd broken into the business and I'd worked with the Warrior in Spain, that he had kind of come across kind of like most people have said he was. So, between my childhood and then my adult life, I'd been let down too many times by the Ultimate Warrior. So, it's a sour subject.
Going into one or two final topics, if you don't mind. First of all, one thing we must ask you about, if you don't mind that is, are about your pecs. Many people will recall that you became known for being able to flex your pecs to music at Ozzy Osbourne's Crazy Train, if I remember correctly, being one of the big songs that people remember. Can you tell us how this seemingly, at the time, unknown talent of yours came to be on television?
I had no idea we were even going to do that. That idea was brought to me that day, and it's funny because people always ask me, like, how do you do that? And, my question is how do you articulate how you do that? I don't really have a way to put that into words. But I remember they gave that to me. I wasn't too excited about it because it was like the first time I'd done a comedy skit, and I was a little skeptical. But I was like, I'm going to make this entertaining if they really want me to do this to the best of my ability. And I went out there and I got a huge reaction. I didn't think it would actually catch on like that. But, I was never looking to keep that like as my permanent shtick. I really felt like that was a good thing, and it did turn me babyface and whatnot. But, I didn't want to just be the guy bouncing his pecs every week or, some kind of comedy stint. So, I tried to get away from that as a little bit over the last year as much as I could. And, try to evolve my character. But, it was definitely a good thing, at least for a few months there. But I don't think it was something that people want to see every week,
I will also ask then, given that it was only brought up to you on the day that you had to do it, did you get a chance to rehearse it, or was that literally a shoot what we saw in the ring, you doing it first time?
Well, I just listened to the song a few times and kind of envisioned it in my head. I was like, because I had to hear the beat to the song, and I kind of just more visualized. I just listened to the song a few times and saw, exactly, what points, that I needed to kind of coordinate with, and so I mean, I visualized. I didn't go, sit back down in the back and bounce my chest around to the song in front of everybody.
Were you a fan of Ozzy Osbourne's music, or was that the first time you had to indulge in it?
No, I like Ozzy. I mean, I'd never purchased an album or anything like that, but I knew Ozzy. I knew of his music and the Osbourne family, so the whole thing was kind of cool to me, and I knew it was a big deal. And Sharon obviously got off on it, so that was cool.
There we go. And the final topic for you is that you have announced that you are going to be coming back over to Europe, but to be a bit more specific to the UK, as it were, any plans to come back over to these shores anytime soon?
I'm hoping to come down to the UK and Europe and as much as I can. I mean, I love working over there, and I love going international, and I'm hoping that that'll actually be primarily what I'll be doing, probably at least for the next year or two here. But I'm not leaving anything off the table, but I definitely plan on going to Europe quite a lot this year.
Excellent stuff. And to wrap up the interview now, I'm going to open up the floor to you. If there's anything that you would like to say to all of our listeners here in the UK, or those tuning in from around the world, the floor is absolutely yours.
Okay, well, I just want to thank everybody for their support, and Chris Masters, a.k.a. Chris Wardetsky, is not going anywhere. And for anybody who wants to reach me for bookings, you can contact my booking manager. Her name is Vess, and that's at masterpiece83@gmail.com. And you can follow me on Twitter at WWE Masterpiece. So, just keep a lookout. I will be coming to Europe very soon. I will be in Portugal on the 19th, and I will announce any further dates on Twitter.
There we go, everybody. Chris, it has been absolutely excellent speaking to you. Thank you very much for giving us the time. And if you can just hang on to the line for a moment as we cut to a commercial, and everybody listening, stay tuned because we'll be right back with more of Dropkick Radio.